I am Flora, 28 years old, and all my life I have been second best to my sister Emma. When my parents chose to attend her impromptu dinner instead of my milestone birthday celebration, something inside me finally broke. I decided to use my hard-earned savings to buy a country house just for myself. The look on their faces when I posted those photos captioned, "The best gift for myself," was priceless. But nothing prepared me for their immediate call demanding I give my new house to Emma. My answer changed everything. Before I share my story, I would love to know where you all are watching from. Take a second to drop your location in the comments, hit that like button, and subscribe if you want to see more stories about finding your worth when family tries to diminish it. Growing up in a middle-class Seattle suburb, I was the first child of Michael and Catherine Thompson. For the first 5 years of my life, things were simple. Dad worked as a sales manager at a tech company while Mom taught elementary school. We lived in a modest home, and while we were never struggling, my parents were careful with money. My childhood photos show mostly secondhand clothes and homemade birthday cakes, but I was happy. Everything changed when Emma was born. Her arrival coincided perfectly with Dad receiving a major promotion to regional director. Suddenly there was money for a bigger house in a better neighborhood with excellent schools. Looking back, I can pinpoint this as the moment our family dynamic shifted permanently. While I had been dressed in practical, affordable clothing, Emma had custom-made outfits. Where I had been enrolled in the local community center art classes that cost $20 per month, Emma got private dance lessons at $200 per session from a former New York ballet performer. My 10th birthday was celebrated with pizza and a few friends in our backyard. Emma's 5th birthday featured a rented bounce house, a hired princess performer, and personalized gift bags for 20 children. I tried not to resent these differences. After all, I was older and understood that financial situations change, but the disparity went beyond what our family could afford at different times. In middle school, I maintained straight, as while participating in the art club and student government. When I won first place in a statewide young artist competition, my parents attended the ceremony but left early because Emma had a dance recital the same evening. They apologized, saying, "You understand, right? You are so independent, and Emma needs more support." This became their constant refrain. High school brought more of the same. I graduated as valedictorian, earning a partial scholarship to the University of Washington for graphic design. My parents nodded appreciatively at graduation, but saved their real excitement for Emma making the junior varsity cheerleading squad that same week. The only person who truly saw me was my grandmother, Grace. Mom's mother lived about 30 minutes away from us, and I spent many weekends at her house during my teenage years. Unlike my parents, Grandma Grace put my artwork on her refrigerator. She attended every school event sitting front row with her camera ready. She told me repeatedly, "Flora, you have extraordinary talent and a beautiful heart. Never let anyone dim your light." When I was 17, Grandma Grace passed away unexpectedly from a heart attack. At the reading of her will, I was surprised to learn she had left me a modest inheritance of $15,000 in a trust I could access at 21. Her note with the bequest read, "Invest in your happiness, Flora. Create the life you deserve." My parents immediately suggested I put the entire amount toward college tuition, but something made me hold back. I placed the money in a separate savings account and decided to wait until I knew exactly how to honor my grandmother's wish. College brought new challenges. While I worked 20 hours weekly at the campus bookstore and took out student loans to cover what my scholarship did, not my parents paid, Emma's full tuition at a private arts academy, she dropped out of after one semester. When she decided she wanted to try culinary school, instead they funded that too. And then her photography phase, and then her attempt at becoming a yoga instructor. Each time Emma found a new passion, my parents supported her completely. Each time she abandoned it, they comforted her and financed the next venture. Meanwhile, I worked through illness, finals, and exhaustion to pay my own way, graduating with honors and $12,000 in student loan debt. After graduation, I was fortunate to land a position as a junior designer at Blue Harbor Creative, a respected design agency in downtown Seattle. I found a tiny studio apartment I could just barely afford, and continued my pattern of frugal living. My parents attended my graduation, but left the celebration dinner early because Emma had called with a crisis about her roommate situation. Despite everything, I still tried to maintain a relationship with my family. Sunday dinners at their house became a tradition, though conversations inevitably centered around Emma's latest pursuits. I learned to ask questions about her life and listen to my parents' detailed answers while they rarely inquired about my work or achievements. When I did share news about a promotion or a successful project, the response was usually a quick, "That is nice, honey," before the topic returned to Emma. This was my normal. I had grown up believing I was less interesting, less important, and less deserving of attention. But beneath that conditioning, a small voice that sounded remarkably like Grandma Grace kept whispering that I deserved more. My first year at Blue Harbor Creative taught me more than 4 years of college combined. I worked longer hours than anyone else volunteered for the challenging projects no one wanted, and soaked up knowledge like a sponge. My natural talent for design, combined with an almost obsessive work ethic, caught the attention of Diane, the creative director. "You have something special, Flora," she told me during my first performance review. "But you need to learn to advocate for yourself. I notice you never take credit for your ideas in meetings." Her observations stunned me. I had been conditioned to downplay my achievements for so long that I did it automatically. With Diane's mentorship, I gradually began speaking up in client presentations and putting my name prominently on my work. 6 months later, I created the central concept for a campaign that won our agency a contract with Northwest Airlines, a major regional carrier. The success earned me a promotion to senior designer with a substantial raise. For the first time in my life, I had financial breathing room. Most people would have upgraded their apartment or bought a new car. I did neither. Instead, I opened a separate savings account labeled Future Home and set up an automatic transfer of 40% of each paycheck. My apartment might have been small, but it was functional. My secondhand car was reliable. Having grown up with limited resources, I knew how to stretch a dollar and find joy in simple pleasures. Around this time, I became friends with Natalie, a copywriter who had joined the agency. Unlike my other colleagues who mostly talked about work and office politics, Natalie and I connected on a deeper level. Over lunch one day, I found myself sharing the story of my family dynamics. "That is some serious golden child syndrome," she said, not bothering to hide her outrage. "You know, that is not normal, right? Parents are supposed to celebrate all their children's accomplishments." "I am used to it," I said with a shrug that failed to convey the hurt beneath it. "Maybe you are used to it, but that does not make it right." Natalie's forthright perspective was both uncomfortable and refreshing. "What would you do if you were not constantly seeking their approval?" Her question stayed with me for days. What did I want just for myself? The answer came unexpectedly one Sunday evening. After another family dinner where I had been essentially invisible, I took a detour on my drive home, winding through an affluent neighborhood with beautiful houses. I found myself slowing down in front of a particular craftsman home with a wide front porch and window boxes full of flowers. Something about it called to me. That night, I started browsing real estate listings online, not with any intention to buy, but as a form of escapism. I found myself drawn to properties outside the city. Small farmhouses, cabins near lakes, country homes with character and land, places where I imagined I could breathe freely and create without constraint. It became a nightly ritual, scrolling through listings before bed, imagining different lives in different spaces. Around the same time, I started a side business designing custom wedding invitations after creating a unique set for Natalie's sister. Word spread quickly, and soon I was spending weekends working on additional projects that further padded my savings account. As my 28th birthday approached, I realized I had reached a significant milestone. I was now older than my parents had been when they purchased their first home. I had also accumulated a substantial savings that, combined with my inheritance from Grandma Grace, could potentially become a down payment. The realization made me want to celebrate in a meaningful way. I made reservations 3 months in advance at Lumiere, an exclusive French restaurant in Seattle with a 6-week waiting list. The price for dinner would be extravagant, but I decided this one milestone deserved a splurge. I texted my parents, and Emma emphasizing the special occasion. My 28th birthday dinner at Lumiere, on the 12th of April at 7 p.m. I made reservations months ago and would love for you all to join me for this milestone celebration. Please let me know if you can make it. To my surprise and delight, they all responded positively. Mom wrote, "We would not miss it, sweetie. So proud of you." Dad added, "Looking forward to it." Even Emma sent a thumbs up emoji. For once, I would be the center of attention. The thought both thrilled and terrified me. In the weeks leading up to my birthday, I found myself feeling genuinely optimistic about my relationship with my family. Maybe they were finally seeing me as an adult with accomplishments worth celebrating. Maybe things were changing. Maybe, just maybe, I would finally feel fully seen by the people whose approval I had sought my entire life. The morning of my birthday arrived with a flurry of congratulatory texts and emails from friends and colleagues. Natalie had organized a small celebration at the office, with cupcakes from my favorite bakery. Diane presented me with a beautiful art book she knew I had been eyeing. Throughout the day, I felt a growing excitement about the evening ahead. I left work early to get ready, treating myself to a blowout at a salon and splurging on a new dress. The navy blue sheath complemented my auburn hair and made me feel confident and beautiful. As I applied my makeup, I practiced what I might say at dinner. I wanted to share my growing success at work and perhaps even hint at my dream of someday owning a home of my own. I arrived at Lumiere 20 minutes early, wanting to make sure everything was perfect. The restaurant was every bit as elegant as I had imagined, with crystal chandeliers, white tablecloths, and fresh flowers on every table. The maître d' led me to a prime corner table I had specifically requested when making the reservation 3 months earlier. "Would you like to order a drink while waiting for the rest of your party?" the server asked after seating me. "Just water for now," I replied. "I will wait until everyone arrives to order champagne." 7 o'clock came and went. I checked my phone repeatedly to ensure I had not missed any messages. Nothing. At 7:15, I sent a group text, "I am at the restaurant." "Did traffic delay you?" No response. By 7:30, I had declined the server's increasingly pitying offers to take my order 3 times. My stomach was nodding with anxiety. Just as I was about to call my mother, my phone buzzed with a text message. From Mom, "Sorry, honey, Emma got last-minute tickets to that new restaurant downtown. You know how hard those are to get. We will celebrate another time." I stared at the message, reading it over and over, willing the words to rearrange themselves into something less painful. The new restaurant she referenced was Altitude, a rooftop dining experience that had opened just a month ago with a celebrity chef from Los Angeles. Reservations were indeed difficult to get, apparently more difficult than keeping a promise to your firstborn daughter. I placed my phone face down on the table and took a deep breath, fighting the burning in my eyes. The server approached again, sympathy evident on her face. "I think the rest of my party will not be joining me after all," I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. "But I would like to stay for dinner if that is all right, and I will have that glass of champagne now." "Of course," she said gently. "And may I say, happy birthday? I noticed it on the reservation." Her small kindness almost broke me. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak without crying. Just as my champagne arrived, I heard a familiar voice call my name. Natalie was threading her way between tables toward me, looking slightly out of breath. "I just had a feeling," she said, sliding into the seat across from mine. "Something told me to check on you." Her eyes took in my expression, the untouched place settings, and the single glass of champagne. "They did not come, did they?" I shook my head, showing her my mother's text. Natalie read it, her expression darkening. "That is not okay, Flora, not by any stretch of the imagination." "It is just dinner," I said weakly, though we both knew it was far more than that. "Well, their loss is my gain. I have not eaten at Lumiere yet, and I have heard the coq au vin is life-changing." Natalie's presence was a lifeline. Throughout the meal, she kept the conversation flowing, making me laugh despite my heartache. We ordered decadent courses and an excellent bottle of wine. On the surface, it might have seemed like any birthday celebration between friends. But beneath my smiles, a fundamental shift was occurring. Something hard and certain was crystallizing in my chest. I had spent 28 years seeking approval and recognition from people who were constitutionally unable to give it. I had arranged my life around a family that consistently demonstrated I was an afterthought. As we finished our dessert, a chocolate soufflé the restaurant provided complimentary for my birthday, my phone pinged with an Instagram notification. Curious, I opened the app to find my sister had posted a series of photos from altitude. My parents were smiling broadly in a selfie with Emma champagne glasses raised in a toast. The caption read, "Spontaneous family night at the hottest spot in town. Number blessed. Number family first." The timestamp showed it had been posted 30 minutes after my mother's text. Flora Natalie's voice seemed to come from far away. "Are you okay?" I looked up, a strange calm settling over me. "I think I just got the best birthday gift ever." "What do you mean?" "Clarity," I said, taking a screenshot of Emma's post. "Complete and total clarity." After dinner, Natalie offered to come over, concerned about leaving me alone, but I assured her I wanted some time to process. In my apartment, I kicked off my heels and sat cross-legged on my bed with my laptop. I opened my banking app and looked at the balance in my future home account. $178,000 accumulated through 4 years of aggressive saving side projects and careful investment of my grandmother's inheritance. Next to it was my regular checking account with another $12,000 for emergencies. Then I opened a real estate website and refined my search criteria: properties within a 2-hour drive of Seattle, minimum of 1 acre of land under $350,000. Instead of just browsing dreamily as I usually did, I began bookmarking listings and making notes. For the first time in my life, I was not going to wait for permission or approval. I was not going to seek validation from people who had consistently shown they could not provide it. I was going to use Grandma Grace's advice and invest in my own happiness. By midnight, I had scheduled 5 property viewings for the coming weekend. By the time I finally went to sleep, not a single member of my family had called or texted to check how my birthday dinner had gone. In the darkness of my bedroom, I made a promise to myself. This would be the last time their indifference would have the power to hurt me. The first 4 properties I visited that weekend were disappointing. Too close to a highway, too much structural damage, awkward layouts that would be costly to modify. But the 5th property made my heart race the moment I turned into the long gravel driveway. Pine Creek Farmhouse sat on 3 acres of land about 90 minutes east of Seattle, just far enough into the countryside to offer privacy, but close enough to allow me to commute to the city 3 days a week. The listing described it as a charming fixer-upper with potential, which was real estate code for needs significant work. The house itself was a 2-story farmhouse built in the 1930s with good bones but decades of neglect. The white paint was peeling, 2 windows were cracked, and the front porch sagged slightly. Inside, the rooms were surprisingly spacious with original hardwood floors buried under worn carpet. The kitchen featured outdated appliances from the 1980s, and the bathrooms needed complete renovation. But what sold me was the view from the back porch. Rolling hills stretched toward a line of mountains in the distance, their peaks still snow-capped even in late April. A small apple orchard with a dozen gnarled trees occupied one corner of the property, and a detached barn that could easily be converted to a studio space stood nearby. The setting sun painted everything in golden light that made my photographer's eye itch for a camera. "The owners are motivated sellers," my real estate agent explained, as we stood on that back porch. "They inherited this property, but live out of state and have no interest in maintaining it." The initial asking price was $320,000, but the inspection revealed some issues with the foundation and roof that they have agreed to factor into a price reduction. "What is the revised asking price?" I asked, trying to sound casual, though my heart was already claiming this place as mine. $280,000, but they would likely accept less to close quickly. I did rapid calculations in my head. With my savings and inheritance, I could make a substantial down payment and still have reserves for the most critical renovations. My credit score was excellent thanks to years of careful financial management. My income from my full-time job plus my side business was stable and growing. "I want to make an offer," I said. $260,000 contingent on a second inspection of the foundation issues. The agent looked surprised at my decisiveness, but nodded approvingly. I think that is a very reasonable approach. The following weeks were a whirlwind of paperwork inspections and negotiations. The second inspection revealed that the foundation issues, while requiring attention, were not as severe as initially reported. The sellers countered with $270,000, and we settled at $265,000. I secured a mortgage with a competitive interest rate, making a down payment of $100,000 that still left me with enough savings to begin essential renovations. Throughout the process, I told no one in my family about my plans. After my birthday, I had received a belated text from my mother saying simply, "Hope you had a nice dinner." "We must reschedule soon," I responded with a non-committal. "Sure," but made no effort to set a date. 6 weeks after my birthday, I signed the final papers and received the keys to my first home. I stood alone in the dusty living room, keys clutched in my hand, feeling terrified and exhilarated in equal measure. For the first time in my life, I had made a major decision without seeking anyone's approval or input. The enormity of what lay ahead was daunting, but also thrilling. That weekend, I gave notice on my apartment and requested a meeting with Diane at work. To my relief, she was supportive of my desire to transition to a hybrid schedule, working remotely 2 days a week. "Your work speaks for itself, Flora," she said. "As long as you maintain your current quality and client satisfaction, I see no reason why you cannot have more flexibility. In fact, I think the change of scenery might inspire even greater creativity." The next phase of my journey involved a steep learning curve. I had never done any home renovation beyond hanging pictures, but YouTube and the local hardware store became my university. I learned to use power tools to patch drywall, to sand floors, and to paint properly. For major systems like plumbing and electrical, I hired professionals, but I was determined to do as much as possible myself. I took 2 weeks of vacation time to focus exclusively on making the house livable. First priority was the primary bathroom, which needed complete renovation. I hired a contractor for the technical aspects, but saved thousands by doing the demolition myself. There was something deeply satisfying about taking a sledgehammer to the avocado green bathtub that had been installed sometime during the Nixon administration. The kitchen came next. Unable to afford a complete renovation immediately, I learned how to refinish the existing cabinets, replacing only the countertops and sink. I found a gently used refrigerator and stove on an online marketplace that fit the vintage aesthetic I wanted to preserve. Weekends became sacred time dedicated to my house. I carefully pulled up the old carpeting to reveal hardwood floors that, while scratched and dull, were structurally sound. Renting an industrial sander, I spent 3 consecutive Saturdays bringing them back to life before applying stain and sealant. As I worked, I met my neighbors. The closest was an elderly couple, the Thompsons, who had lived on the adjacent property for 40 years. Mr. Thompson, a retired contractor, became an invaluable resource, offering advice and occasionally lending tools. Mrs. Thompson brought over homemade bread and jam to welcome me, expressing delight that someone young is bringing life back to the old Nelson place. On the other side, about a quarter-mile down the road, lived Sam Jackson, a landscape architect who offered to help me plan a garden when I mentioned wanting to grow vegetables. His partner David taught woodworking classes at a community college and helped me build custom bookshelves for the living room in exchange for my designing their wedding invitations. Slowly, weekend by weekend, room by room, Pine Creek farmhouse transformed from a neglected property into my home. I painted the exterior a soft gray with white trim and repaired the sagging front porch. I chose colors for the interior that reflected the natural surroundings: sage green for the kitchen, warm terracotta for the living room, and a peaceful blue for my bedroom. Each decision was mine alone. Each improvement a physical manifestation of my growing independence. The most meaningful project was the conversion of the old barn into a studio space. The structure was sound, needing only cleaning, insulation, and proper lighting to become a perfect workspace for my design, business, and personal art projects. I installed large windows on the north wall to capture indirect light, ideal for creative work. On the wall above my desk, I hung a single photograph of my grandmother Grace, her smile watching over my newfound independence. 3 months after receiving the keys, the major renovations were complete. The house was not perfect. There were still projects on my list that would take years to complete, but it was comfortable, functional, and undeniably mine. Every corner reflected my taste, my choices, and my vision. During this time, my communication with my family had been minimal. I attended one Sunday dinner early in the renovation process, deflecting questions about why I had been so busy lately with vague references to work projects. My parents predictably did not press for details quickly, turning the conversation to Emma's latest venture, a plan to start a wellness coaching business that they were considering investing in. As I put the finishing touches on my studio space, installing the desk I had carefully selected, and arranging my design equipment, I felt a profound sense of peace. The transformation of the house mirrored my own internal journey. Like the structure itself, I had good bones that had been obscured by years of neglect, not self-neglect, but the neglect of others to see and nurture my worth. With each repair and improvement I made to the house, I was also repairing my sense of self-worth. With each decision made without seeking approval, I was reclaiming my autonomy. The physical distance from Seattle and my family provided emotional space to recognize unhealthy patterns and begin dismantling them. The final touch was the garden I planted behind the house, a mixture of vegetables, herbs, and flowers. As I placed the last rosebush in the ground, I remembered Grandma Grace's passion for gardening and her favorite saying, "To plant a garden is to believe in tomorrow." I had not just invested in a house, I had invested in my tomorrow. After 3 months of renovation and transformation, I felt ready to share my achievement with the world. My friend Jamie, a professional photographer I had met through work, offered to document the before and after of my renovation project. On a perfect summer day, we spent hours capturing every angle of the house and property in the golden afternoon light. The photographs were stunning, showing the dramatic contrast between the neglected property I had purchased and the charming country home it had become. Jamie's talent for composition highlighted the character of the old house, while showcasing the thoughtful improvements I had made. That evening, after Jamie left with promises to send the edited photos within a few days, I sat on my back porch watching the sunset, feeling a profound sense of accomplishment. For perhaps the first time in my life, I had created something entirely for myself, without seeking external validation. When Jamie's photographs arrived in my inbox 3 days later, I spent an hour selecting the best images and crafting a careful social media post. I had never been particularly active on social platforms, typically posting only a few times a month. This would be different. This would be a declaration. The post I created included 10 images: the house exterior before and after the kitchen transformation, the restored hardwood floors, the renovated bathroom, the studio conversion views of the mountains from my property, the beginning of my property, garden, and finally a photo of me sitting on the front porch, looking relaxed and happy in a way I had rarely captured on camera before. The caption read, "The best gift for myself, my new country house." After months of renovation, Pine Creek Farmhouse is finally home. Every nail hammered, every wall painted, and every decision made has been a step toward creating a space that is completely my own. This project has taught me that sometimes the best investment you can make is in your own happiness. Number, homeowner number, renovation number, country life. I hesitated only briefly before pressing share. Within minutes, the notifications began rolling in. Friends from college, colleagues from work, acquaintances from various phases of my life responded with likes, comments, and congratulatory messages. Natalie called almost immediately. "Flora Thompson, you sneaky genius. Is this what you have been working on all these weekends? It is absolutely gorgeous." As we talked, another notification appeared on my phone screen. Mom calling. My stomach tightened, but I felt strangely calm. "Natalie, I need to go. My mother is calling." "Good luck," she said knowingly. "Call me after if you need to vent." I took a deep breath and answered, "Hi, Mom." "Flora, what is this house on your Instagram? Is this some kind of joke?" Her tone was more bewildered than angry, as though she could not quite process what she was seeing. "No joke," I replied evenly. "I bought it 3 months ago. I have been renovating it on weekends and taking time off work." "But how could you afford a house?" And why would you buy something so far from the city? Does your boss know you moved? Have you thought this through at all? The questions came rapid fire, each one revealing her underlying assumption that I was incapable of making sound decisions. I have been saving for years, Mom. I made a substantial down payment and secured a mortgage based on my income from both my full-time job and my side business. My boss approved my request to work remotely part-time, and yes, I thought it through very carefully. But why would you do something so major without talking to us? Your father knows real estate. He could have advised you. There it was. The real issue was not that I had bought a house, but that I had done so without their input, without giving them control over my decision. I wanted to do this independently, I said simply. Well, you should have told us. We are your family. Her tone shifted slightly, curiosity creeping in. It actually looks quite nice in the photos. How many bedrooms does it have? 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, about 2,000 square feet total plus the barn I converted to a studio, and 3 acres of land. I could almost hear her mental calculations, the property suddenly becoming more interesting now that she knew its specifications. Your father will want to see it, and the location might actually be perfect for Emma's wellness retreat idea. She has been looking for a property with character. My grip tightened on the phone. Mom, this is my home. I bought it for myself. Of course, dear. I am just saying it could be useful for family purposes too. We will come out this weekend to see it. Before I could protest, she had hung up, presumably to share the news with my father and sister. I stood in my kitchen, the knot in my stomach tightening. I had hoped for congratulations or at least acknowledgement of my achievement. Instead, my mother had immediately begun calculating how my property could benefit Emma. Within minutes, my father called. Unlike my mother, he did not bother with confusion or questions. Flora, why would you make such a large purchase without consulting me? I could have negotiated a better price or found you something with better investment potential closer to the city. Hello to you too, Dad, I said, struggling to keep my tone neutral. I am quite happy with the price I negotiated and the location suits me perfectly. What is the square footage acreage original asking price versus what you paid? His questions were rapid and businesslike. I provided the information, including the original asking price and my successful negotiation for a lower one. There was a pause on the line as he processed this. That is actually not terrible, he conceded reluctantly. But the property values in that area have been stagnant. You should have looked in the northwestern corridor where development is planned. I did not buy it as an investment property, Dad. I bought it as my home. All real estate is investment, Flora. You need to think long-term. Anyway, your mother says we will come out Saturday to assess it. What is the address? I provided the details, a sense of dread building. After ending the call with my father, I waited for the inevitable contact from Emma. It came not as a call, but as a text message. Oh my God, your house looks amazing. Mom says it is perfect for my wellness retreat concept. Cannot wait to see it Saturday and talk about possibilities. The entire exchange left me feeling hollow. Not once had anyone congratulated me on my achievement. Not once had they expressed happiness for me. Instead, within minutes of learning about my new home, they had already begun planning how to co-opt it for Emma's benefit. Saturday arrived sunny and clear. I had spent the previous evening stress cleaning an already immaculate house, trying to prepare myself emotionally for the visit. At precisely 11 a.m., my parents' luxury SUV pulled into my driveway, followed by Emma's compact car. I met them on the front porch, forcing a smile. Welcome to Pine Creek Farmhouse. My mother hugged me briefly before immediately beginning to scan the property. My father nodded his eyes, already assessing the structure and land with a calculating gaze. Emma bounced excitedly from her car, her blonde hair catching the sunlight. Flora, this place is incredible. It is like something out of a magazine. I cannot believe you did all this work yourself. Her enthusiasm seemed genuine, which made what followed even more painful. The next 2 hours were a blur of showing them through each room, explaining the renovations and answering questions. My mother kept pointing out spaces that would be perfect for yoga classes or ideal for wellness consultations. My father assessed everything in terms of dollar value and potential return on investment. Emma chattered constantly about how the property aligned perfectly with her vision for a wellness retreat. Not once did anyone comment on how the space reflected my personality or ask how I felt about living there. The renovations I had poured my heart into were evaluated solely for their marketability or usefulness to Emma's latest venture. We ended up on the back porch where I had hoped they might at least appreciate the view that had first captured my heart. Instead, my father cleared his throat and adopted the tone he always used for business discussions. "Flora, your mother and I have been talking, and we think this property would be ideal for Emma's wellness retreat concept. You know she has been looking for the right location, and this has everything she needs." I stared at him temporarily speechless. "We think the most sensible solution would be for you to transfer ownership to Emma," he continued. "Of course, we would make sure you are compensated fairly for your investment." Compensated, I finally managed. "Dad, this is not an investment property. This is my home. I live here." "You can find another place closer to the city," my mother interjected smoothly. "This commute must be exhausting. Emma really needs the space more than you do. Her business concept requires land and privacy." "I am not selling my house," I said flatly. "Not to Emma, not to anyone." "Do not be selfish, Flora," my father said, his tone hardening. "Your sister has a real opportunity here to build something significant. You have your design career already established. You need to think about what is best for the family." "I am thinking about what is best for me," I replied, a calm clarity settling over me. For once in my life, I am prioritizing my own needs and happiness. This is my house. I bought it with my money. I renovated it with my hands, and I am not giving it to Emma. Emma, who had been uncharacteristically quiet during this exchange, suddenly spoke. "Flora, I thought you would want to help me. This is my dream. You know how long I have been trying to find my purpose. Like you found your purpose in dance, or culinary arts, or photography, or yoga teaching." The words escaped before I could stop them, years of resentment bubbling to the surface. "That is completely unfair," my mother gasped. "Emma is a creative spirit. She needs space to explore her interests." "And I needed parents who showed up for my birthday dinner," I countered, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. "I needed family who celebrated my achievements, instead of immediately figuring out how they could benefit Emma." The silence that followed was deafening. My father's face had reddened with anger. My mother looked shocked, and Emma's eyes had filled with tears. "I think you all should leave now," I said quietly, standing up from the porch swing. "Thank you for coming to see my home. But it is my home, and it will remain my home." "You need to think very carefully about your priorities, Flora," my father said coldly as they gathered their things. "Family should come first." "I agree," I replied, looking him directly in the eye. "Family should come first. But in our family, only one person ever has." I walked them to their cars, maintaining a polite facade despite the turmoil inside. As their vehicles disappeared down my long driveway, I returned to my porch and sank onto the swing, shaking with adrenaline and emotion. Then, for the first time since the renovation began, I allowed myself to cry, not from sadness, but from the extraordinary relief of finally standing my ground. The week following my family's visit brought a barrage of texts, calls, and voicemails, each employing a different tactic to wear down my resolve. My father started with anger, leaving clipped messages about my selfish behavior and failure to understand family obligation. My mother tried guilt, sending long texts reminiscing about all they had done for me growing up and expressing disappointment that I would not support my sister's dreams. Emma vacillated between tearful pleading and passive-aggressive jabs about my sudden change in personality. I responded minimally, repeating the same simple message. "This is my home, and I am not selling it." By Thursday, my father changed tactics, sending a detailed proposal offering to buy the property at 10% above market value, with generous terms that would allow me to find a more suitable place closer to work. I did not respond. Friday brought a text from my mother suggesting a compromise where Emma could use the property on weekends for her wellness activities, while I maintained ownership, completely ignoring the fact that I valued my weekends of peace and privacy. The following Sunday, my Aunt Catherine, my father's sister, whom I had always been close to, called unexpectedly. "Flora, honey, what is going on? Your parents are telling everyone you have become unreasonably attached to some old farmhouse and are refusing to help your sister start her business." I laughed without humor. "Is that their version? Let me tell you mine." For the next 30 minutes, I recounted everything the years of being overlooked, the birthday dinner betrayal, my decision to buy the house, and their immediate attempt to claim it for Emma. Aunt Catherine listened without interruption, sighing heavily when I finished. "I wish I could say I am surprised," she said finally. "My brother has always favored Emma, though I have never understood why. But Flora, this pattern will continue as long as you allow it. They are used to you eventually giving in." "Not this time," I said firmly. "Good for you. For what it is worth, I am incredibly proud of what you have accomplished. Buying and renovating a house on your own is remarkable." Her words brought tears to my eyes, the simple acknowledgement I had been seeking from my parents. 2 days later, I received an email from a real estate agent I had never met inquiring if I would be interested in selling my property to her clients, who were very motivated and prepared to make an extremely competitive offer. The agent's signature line revealed she worked at the same firm as my father's golf buddy. I marked the email as spam without replying. The following weekend brought the most direct confrontation yet. I was in my garden harvesting the first tomatoes of the season when a car I did not recognize pulled into my driveway. Emma emerged alone, dressed in yoga pants and a flowy top that I assumed was part of her wellness expert aesthetic. "We need to talk," she announced, striding toward me with determination. "You are not returning calls, and this situation needs resolution." I stood, brushing dirt from my hands. "There is nothing to resolve, Emma. This is my house. I am not selling it. End of discussion." "You are being completely unreasonable," she huffed. "Mom and Dad think so too. This property is perfect for my wellness retreat. Do you know how hard it is to find 3 acres with mountain views within budget?" "I do actually," I replied evenly. "That is why I spent years saving to buy it." Emma rolled her eyes dramatically. "You are just using it as a weekend house. I would be building a business here. An actual career. Something meaningful. This is not a weekend house. This is my primary residence. I commute to Seattle 3 days a week." "Whatever. The point is, you have always been the responsible one with the steady job. I am trying to find my path, and you are blocking me out of spite." The accusation was so absurd I almost laughed. "Spite, Emma, I bought this house before I even told any of you about it. How could that possibly be about spite?" "Because you have always been jealous of me," she said with absolute conviction. "You resent the fact that Mom and Dad supported my creative endeavors, while you had to be the boring, responsible one." The staggering lack of self-awareness momentarily left me speechless. When I finally found my voice, it was steady and clear. "Emma, I have never been jealous of you. But I have spent my entire life being treated as less important, less interesting, and less deserving of support than you. When Mom and Dad skipped my birthday dinner for your impromptu restaurant outing, it finally made me realize I would never be a priority in this family." "That was just dinner," she dismissed with a wave of her hand. "You are being dramatic. It was my birthday dinner that I had planned 3 months in advance. But that is not even the point. The point is that this pattern has existed our entire lives. You get opportunities, support, and resources that I never received. And the one time I create something for myself, the immediate family response is to demand I give it to you." Emma's expression shifted slightly, a flicker of uncertainty crossing her features. "They do not treat us that differently. When you were 14, Dad bought you a car for getting your learner's permit. When I was 16 and got my actual license, I was told to save up if I wanted a vehicle. That was different. The timing. When I graduated college with honors, they left my celebration dinner early because you had roommate drama. When you dropped out of your 3rd attempt at college, they took you to Hawaii to refresh your perspective." Emma fell silent, her certainty visibly wavering. "I do not resent you, Emma," I continued more gently, "but I am done being the one who always gives way. This house represents the first time in my life I have prioritized my own happiness, and I will not give it up." She stared at me for a long moment, then looked around at the property with new eyes, perhaps seeing for the first time what it truly meant to me. "I never realized," she said quietly. "I guess I just assumed. I do not know what I assumed." That is the problem. None of you ever stopped to consider my feelings or perspective. Emma nodded slowly, a thoughtful expression replacing her earlier indignation. "I need to think about all this." She left soon after without extracting any promises or making further demands. It felt like the first real conversation we had ever had as adults. The temporary peace lasted exactly 1 week. Then my parents launched what I can only describe as a full-scale family intervention. They arrived unannounced on a Sunday afternoon with Emma, my uncle Robert, Dad's brother, and my grandmother Judith, Mom's mother, in tow. "We are here to resolve this situation as a family," my father announced from my front porch. I stood in the doorway blocking entry. "There is no situation to resolve. I have made my decision clear." "Flora, please," my mother pleaded. "We have brought family to help mediate. Can we at least come in and discuss this civilly?" Against my better judgment, I allowed them inside. What followed was anything but civil. My father presented what he called a final offer. Essentially the same terms as before, with a slightly higher purchase price. My uncle Robert, who worked in commercial real estate, cited property statistics and market projections supporting the idea that selling would be the smart financial move. My grandmother Judith reminded me that family supports each other in their endeavors and suggested I was being selfish. Throughout it all, Emma sat silently, avoiding eye contact. When pressed to speak, she merely mumbled that she still thought the property would be perfect for her wellness center but understood it was my decision. Her lack of enthusiasm seemed to surprise our parents. As the barrage of pressure continued, something inside me hardened into unshakable resolve. I waited for a pause in the conversation, then stood up. "I have listened to all of you," I said calmly. "Now I need you to listen to me. This house is not for sale, not to Emma, not to anyone. More importantly, I am taking a break from family contact for a while. I need space to establish boundaries that all of you seem unwilling to respect." "You cannot just cut off your family," my mother gasped. "I am not cutting anyone off permanently. I am taking necessary space to protect my mental health and well-being. Something I should have done years ago." My father started to protest, but I held up my hand. "This is not a negotiation. It is a statement of fact. I would like all of you to leave now. When I am ready to resume contact, I will reach out." The shocked silence that followed was broken only by Emma's quiet voice. "She is right. We should go." Their departure was tense and awkward, with my parents clearly struggling to process my unprecedented defiance. As their cars disappeared down my driveway, I felt a curious mixture of grief and liberation. The family dynamics I had accepted as normal for 28 years were finally being challenged, and while the process was painful, it was also necessary. The following day, I contacted a lawyer to ensure my property was legally protected. I drafted a will specifying that in the event of my death, the house would go to a trust supporting young artists. A tribute to Grandma Grace, who had been my only true supporter. These measures might have seemed extreme, but they provided peace of mind that allowed me to focus on healing and building my new life. For the next 3 months, I maintained my boundary of no contact. I blocked my parents' numbers temporarily after they continued calling despite my request for space. I set up email filters to redirect their messages to a folder I could check when emotionally prepared. I immersed myself in work, both my agency job and my growing side business of wedding invitations and custom artwork. The country house continued to evolve under my care. I installed a new heating system before winter, painted the remaining interior rooms, and planted bulbs in the garden that would bloom in spring. Each improvement reinforced my commitment to creating a life that honored my own needs and desires, rather than constantly deferring to others. My circle of friends expanded as I became more involved in the local community. I joined a book club that met monthly at the small library in the nearest town. I attended workshops on organic gardening at a neighboring farm. I invited colleagues from work to weekend brunches, where we sat on my porch enjoying the mountain view. For the first time in my life, I was building relationships based on mutual respect and genuine connection rather than obligation or habit. And gradually the pain of family estrangement began to subside, replaced by a growing sense of peace and self-acceptance. I was proving to myself daily that I could create a fulfilling life on my own terms, that I was worthy of the space, beauty, and tranquility I had claimed for myself. 6 months after my declaration of needing space, I was thriving in ways I never imagined possible. My hybrid work arrangement had proven so successful that Diane had approved my request to work remotely 4 days a week, requiring only 1 day in the Seattle office for in-person client meetings and team collaboration. My side business had grown to the point where I was considering establishing it as a formal studio, with inquiries coming not just for wedding invitations, but for brand identity work and custom illustrations. The house had become truly mine in every sense. I had weathered my first winter in the country, learning to manage the wood stove, shovel the long driveway after snowstorms, and appreciate the special quiet that came with rural life in the colder months. As spring arrived, the bulbs I had planted the previous fall erupted in waves of color across the front yard, and the apple trees in the small orchard burst into fragrant blossoms. I had transformed the barn into not just a workspace but a true art studio. After years of focusing exclusively on commercial design, I had returned to painting, a passion I had abandoned after college. Each weekend I would spend hours with canvas and brushes, creating abstract landscapes inspired by the changing light on the mountains visible from my property. These paintings were for no one but myself, an act of pure creativity without concern for client approval or commercial viability. My neighbor Sam had helped me design and build raised garden beds, where I was growing vegetables and herbs. The simple act of nurturing plants from seed to harvest had become a meditative practice that grounded me in the changing seasons and the rhythms of the natural world. There was something profoundly healing about working with my hands in the soil, creating life and sustenance through patient attention. It was on a perfect May morning, as I was tending to these garden beds, that the mail carrier delivered an unexpected letter. The envelope bore no return address, but I recognized Emma's handwriting immediately. For a moment, I considered setting it aside until I felt emotionally prepared to engage with family matters again. But curiosity won out. Inside was a 3-page handwritten letter that began without preamble. I have been doing a lot of thinking about our conversation and about our family dynamics. I believe I owe you an apology. What followed was a thoughtful reflection on our shared childhood and the patterns of favoritism that I had named but Emma had never before acknowledged. She wrote about conversations with a therapist who had helped her recognize the unhealthy dynamics in our family system and her own role in perpetuating them. She acknowledged specific incidents where she had benefited from preferential treatment and expressed genuine regret for never questioning the unfairness. I always assumed the extra attention and support I received was normal, she wrote. It never occurred to me to ask why you were not given the same opportunities or encouragement. I see now how painful that must have been for you, and I am truly sorry for my part in it. The letter concluded with a request to meet for coffee at a neutral location, no agenda, no house discussion, just two sisters trying to understand each other better. I sat in my garden for a long time after reading the letter, emotions washing through me in complex waves. There was vindication in Emma's acknowledgement, pain in revisiting old wounds, and cautious hope at the possibility of a more authentic relationship with my sister. After careful consideration, I texted the number she had included in her letter and agreed to meet the following weekend at a cafe halfway between my house and Seattle. When I arrived at the cafe, Emma was already there, looking noticeably different from when I had last seen her. Her usual, carefully styled appearance had been replaced by a simpler, more natural look. She seemed nervous, fidgeting with her coffee cup as I approached. "Thank you for coming," she said as I sat down across from her. "I was not sure you would." "Your letter seemed sincere," I replied. "I appreciated that." "It was sincere. I have been doing a lot of work on myself these past few months." She took a deep breath. "After our conversation at your house, I could not stop thinking about what you said. At first I was defensive, but the more I reflected, the more examples I could see of the pattern you described." "What changed?" I asked, genuinely curious. "I started therapy," she admitted. Initially because I was upset about the house situation, but it quickly became about much more than that. My therapist helped me see how I had been enabled my entire life to avoid responsibility and consequences. How I had been taught to expect others, especially you, to accommodate my wants and needs without reciprocation. We talked for nearly 3 hours, sharing perspectives on our childhood and young adulthood with a candor that had never before been possible. Emma revealed her own insecurities, how she had interpreted our parents' excessive attention as pressure to be special to justify their investment, how she had started and abandoned countless pursuits because nothing ever felt like enough, how exhausting it was to be the golden child with the constant expectation of extraordinary achievement. "I always envied your clarity," she confessed. "You knew what you wanted and worked steadily toward it. I was just flailing from one thing to the next, hoping something would finally make me feel complete. And now," I asked, "now I am trying to build something real on my own terms. I have been working at a local community center teaching yoga to seniors, not as a glamorous wellness guru, but as a regular instructor with regular pay. I am taking business classes at the community college to learn the fundamentals before launching any venture. I am trying to live within my means for the first time in my life." As our conversation continued, I found myself cautiously optimistic about the possibility of a new kind of relationship with my sister, one based on mutual respect and honest communication, rather than competition and resentment. "What about Mom and Dad?" I finally asked. "Have they made any similar realizations?" Emma sighed. "They are struggling. Dad especially cannot understand why his generous offer to buy your house was rejected. They still talk about it sometimes, though less often now. I have tried to explain your perspective, but they have a hard time seeing past their own expectations." "I am not surprised," I said, feeling a twinge of sadness, but no longer the sharp pain that had once accompanied thoughts of my parents' disappointment. Their worldview does not easily accommodate children who make choices they did not approve or orchestrate. "Would you be open to seeing them eventually?" Emma asked carefully. "Not now, but maybe someday. On your terms." Maybe, I conceded, but only with clear boundaries and expectations. We parted that day with a tentative plan to meet monthly, a small step toward rebuilding our relationship as adults, rather than as competitors for parental approval. 2 months later, after several more positive meetings with Emma, I received an email from my parents. The tone was noticeably different from their previous communications, less demanding, more reflective. They acknowledged that they may have overreacted to my house purchase, and expressed a desire to understand my perspective better. While falling short of a true apology, it represented a shift in their approach. After careful consideration, I responded with an invitation for them to visit my home with clear conditions. There would be no discussion of selling the property or accommodating Emma's business ideas. This would be simply a chance to reconnect as family and for them to see the life I had built for myself. Their visit was awkward but civil. My father commented on the quality of my renovation work with grudging approval. My mother admired my garden and seemed genuinely interested in my paintings displayed in the studio. Neither made any reference to Emma or to their previous demands regarding the property. As they were preparing to leave, my father cleared his throat uncomfortably. "The place looks good, Flora. You have done well here." Coming from him, it was as close to an apology as I was likely to get. I accepted it for what it was. "Thank you," I said simply. "I am happy here." Over the following months, a new pattern of family interaction slowly emerged. Emma and I continued our monthly coffee meetings, gradually rebuilding trust and discovering the possibility of authentic sisterhood without competition. My parents and I established a cautious détente with brief visits every few months that remained cordial, if not deeply connected. I accepted that our relationship might never be what I had once hoped for, but it could at least be honest. The most meaningful celebration came on the 1-year anniversary of my house purchase. I hosted a gathering that represented my new life perfectly. Emma came bringing her new boyfriend who taught at the community college. Natalie and several colleagues from work made the drive from Seattle. My neighbors Sam and David brought homemade bread and wine from a local vineyard. Even Aunt Catherine joined, expressing her pride in what I had created. My parents were invited but sent their regrets, citing a previous commitment. I found I was neither surprised nor particularly disappointed by their absence. Their approval was no longer the currency by which I measured my worth. As twilight fell, my guests gathered on the back porch and raised glasses in a toast. To Flora, Natalie proclaimed, who taught us all that investing in your own happiness is not selfish, it is necessary. Looking around at the diverse community I had built, friends, family, neighbors, colleagues, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. The journey had been painful at times, but it had led me to a life that was authentically mine. I had created a home that reflected my values and priorities, established relationships based on mutual respect, and discovered creative fulfillment on my own terms. Most importantly, I had learned that standing firm in my own worth was not selfish or wrong. It was essential. By refusing to continue patterns of self-sacrifice and accommodation, I had not only changed my own life, but potentially broken a dysfunctional cycle that might otherwise have continued indefinitely. As I look back on that pivotal birthday when my parents chose Emma's dinner over mine, I realize it was actually a gift, the moment of clarity that pushed me to finally prioritize my own needs and dreams. The country house became not just my home, but a physical manifestation of my self-worth. A declaration that I deserved beauty, peace, and fulfillment as much as anyone else. If you have ever felt overlooked or undervalued by those who should have championed you most, I hope my story gives you courage. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is to give yourself what others have withheld: recognition, support, and love. Creating boundaries is not about shutting people out, but about teaching them how to treat you with the respect you deserve. I would love to hear your thoughts on family dynamics and setting boundaries. Have you ever had to stand up for yourself against family pressure? How did you handle it? Please share your experiences in the comments below, and do not forget to like and subscribe if this story resonated with you. Thank you for listening, and remember that investing in your own happiness is never a selfish act. It is the foundation upon which we build our most authentic lives.